What's happened so far, just on a very, very high level here to start this year? We're about halfway through the year. 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs were launched in the US. We even had some in Hong Kong launched this year. There's rumors of other countries launching them. Other countries have had them well before the US as well. So the US was kind of a little late to the party. Canada had Bitcoin ETFs and Ethereum ETFs too. But it's a few buyers that are buying a lot of these spot ETFs. But what the spot ETF did is it now forces the conversation. So, if you all have those financial advisors who maybe you wanted to speak to them about Bitcoin before, they had no incentive to really tell you to buy this Bitcoin ETF or buy Bitcoin in general. Well, now you could at least sit down and talk with them and bring it up to them. This is extremely huge and cannot be understated. Thank you. Thank you guys all for having me. I really appreciate the invite and the opportunity to come down to speak with all of you guys. As John said, I'm going to do a little bit of a shortened version because I don't have my counterpart Luke here with me. But I did it on the Bitcoin ETF, which I'm sure you all know was launched. 11 of them were launched earlier this year. But first, to start it off, you guys are probably wondering, who am I? I'm Brandon Keys. I have an engineering background and an athletic background. So I'm not usually in the financial space. A lot of what I've learned over the past, 7 or 8 years now is a lot of self-taught from podcasts and other things like that. But I think that's part of my advantage when I come to events like this, because I was once sitting in your chairs at some point in time, very curious as to what is going on, how I can make my wealth last longer, what's going on with the economy. And what I was finding was a lot of the content out there uses a lot of jargon. It's very complex, but when you really break it down, it's pretty simple subjects. Supply and demand is at the root of it. And a lot of those things are, not super hard to comprehend or understand. And people just like to convolute them and make things more difficult than they really are, in my opinion. So I was trying to tell my former track teammates all of this stuff, and they didn't want to listen to me. So I started my company, Green Candle. I started as a newsletter, trying to, kind of break things down and make it a lot easier for people to understand, trying to bring some humor to it, be a little more friendly about it. So I started a newsletter originally, and then now I have 2 podcasts with it as well. One strictly on Bitcoin called State of Bitcoin, but then I also have a macro podcast where I talk to, everybody in the macroeconomic space, some stock investors, hedge fund guys, some real estate guys, so I can get the full overarching picture, because I feel like that really gives me an advantage to understand what's going on currently in the actual system and how we can, get the solution over there with Bitcoin. So now into the good stuff, the presentation. So big disclaimer here. I'm going to be extremely bullish for you guys, because I'm extremely bullish on Bitcoin going forward here in this next year, and I'll find out why. But a big reason to that is the Bitcoin ETFs and kind of the overarching environment around Bitcoin, a lot of the adoption, a lot of things like you guys all sitting here starting to figure out about Bitcoin and what is coming in. So currently, as we're sitting here today, I think Bitcoin's up around 40% when I was revising these slides. But what's happened so far, just on a very, very high level here to start this year? We're about halfway through the year. 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs were launched in the US. We even had some in Hong Kong launched this year. There's rumors of other countries launching them. Other countries have had them well before the US as well. So the US was kind of a little late to the party. Canada had Bitcoin ETFs and Ethereum ETFs too before, but we also had the 4th halving as well earlier this year. So as we all know, that kind of just splits the daily supply from 900 to about 450 Bitcoin a day. And the interest rate environment is still extremely high in the US. And with all that being said, this was also the first time that we've had an all-time high hit prior to that halving period, which I think is very important because, we had the ETFs come in, a lot of money being dumped in. So although we're a little bit down, I think we're at like 62 to 63,000 today. We're still close and pushing on that all-time high. Okay. Yeah, so the current status of these Bitcoin ETFs. So there's 11, and the total market cap is about $77 billion. So it sounds like a lot, right? But if you think about it, Bitcoin's current market cap is, 1,214 times, a billion. So it's still, 94-ish% higher than the overall market cap of the spot ETFs, all of them combined. But I say this all to being said that in this 7 month period, the overall traditional finance, the people who are kind of have access to these ETFs, they've been scooping up a lot of it really quickly, and the demand is there, and the demand's been sitting there for quite some time. So I'm looking for that to continue. We even had a high purchase day of 10,000 Bitcoin alone on a single day when we were seeing Bitcoin shoot up from like 60 to about 70,000 on a random Tuesday or Wednesday earlier this year in March. So with all that being said, the demand is really there, but it's a few buyers that are buying a lot of these spot ETFs. There's not a lot of retail people going in telling their financial advisors. There's still a lot of people kind of still waiting, figuring out what this Bitcoin thing is. But what the spot ETF did is it now forces the conversation. So, if you all have those financial advisors who maybe you wanted to speak to them about Bitcoin before, they had no incentive to really tell you to buy this Bitcoin ETF or buy Bitcoin in general. Well, now you could at least sit down and talk with them and bring it up to them, because this is another avenue, another touch point. And so I think that, this is extremely huge and cannot be understated. And it even started with 71 straight days of net inflows. So, a lot of demand for it initially, and people were pouring money into it. So we did see, the Grayscale had a trust that a lot of Bitcoin was being poured out of. You could see here, because the fees were extremely high. So people were still even buying these ETFs, although are buying the other ETFs because they realized the fees were lower on that comparatively to the Grayscale ETF. And so that's going to continue, and people are going to look for the cheapest way and the most secure way to buy and hold Bitcoin. And I think, that's going to keep on continuing here throughout this year. And, we did see a recent dip, but we're still seeing massive amounts of inflows with the market cap and everything still continuing. So the ETFs are still pumping, and it's showing signs of early euphoria since March. So we've seen, a little bit of a drawdown here in early July, but from previous cycles, if you've looked at it, you usually see the halving period, you see kind of like a summer lull, and then you see a run up starting towards the end of the year. So I'm not, obviously not financial advice or anything like that, and I'm not projecting it to go straight up at this point. But I think that this kind of summer lull was almost a little bit anticipated because of how much money was getting dumped in when the ETFs initially launched. And then there's going to be a slight pullback of people kind of looking at it. But I think, as we saw in that one day in March, when there is a little bit of a run up, there's going to be a lot of FOMO money, or like fear of missing out, of people kind of dumping into money when they see that price start to run up. So, what we have started to see, throughout Bitcoin's history is, kind of a one big giant cycle in a 4-year period, where it's a big bear or a big bull up, then a big bull bear down, and all that. But what we have different in this cycle is we have a lot of money being poured into it, a lot more money. The market cap's a lot higher. So this is where I think we could see a little bit of a 2 or 3 part cycle, where we could see, a run up, maybe a little bit of a lull, and then, another run up. So it's not going to be something that's straight up or straight down. And I think it's a lot to do with the demand and, in that aspect of things. So I'm not quite sure how deep you guys have gotten into the Bitcoin space either, but there's another aspect of it called the hash rate and kind of the mining output of Bitcoin. I alluded to it a little bit at the beginning when I talked about the halving period. But what was interesting of this past bear market was that the hash rate actually increased. And so generally in a bear market, you see the hash rate decrease because what the hash rate is basically the difficulty for the amount of Bitcoin that gets mined. And so when that hash rate increases, it means more miners are coming online competing for that same block reward, which makes it more expensive. And when the price is down, that means that you're not necessarily making any money. But the encouraging thing is we saw that go up even when the price was down in this previous bear market. So a lot of people are seeing the value in Bitcoin mining and kind of finding other avenues to get into Bitcoin as well, outside of just this ETF. So all of this is kind of lining out to say that, there's been a lot of demand, a lot of people getting into Bitcoin and kind of holding it on this cycle. And that's why I think there's going to be a little bit of differences that we're going to see, but positive differences. So, with this here, you've seen like the months of the sideways crabs with weeks of a bull cycle should be expected. So, this is kind of where we've been before. We've seen that, 6 months of somewhat of a crab cycle prior to, a big run up. So, 6 months crab, then 5 months up. So things can kind of happen very quickly here in the Bitcoin space because of the volatility. Some people try to use that as a negative aspect, but if you zoom out and look at the chart, the volatility in the short term, if you just zoom out, that the volatility kind of helps and it goes up. But generally speaking, these other cycles have kind of outlined how the crab kind of lines up, and then how long the bull market could potentially last. So we've been in it for 6 to 8 months now, and then you've seen the other two previous cycles go for about 11 and 18 months total.
Why is it called the crab?
Because it's more sideways. I don't know why the crab, but I guess you can imagine the crab. Yeah, you can see the crab kind of, So I mean, I guess they like that. They like the animal metaphors, right? So I don't know why the bull is up and the bear is down, but never really understood that either.
Yes, you do. Huh? The bear's claws swipe down.
Oh.
The bull's horns flick up.
Oh, there we go. I didn't know that. I never really thought of that.
I didn't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm from Chicago, so we got the Chicago Bulls and the Bears, and the Bulls have had a lot of success, and the Bears haven't. So that's what I always think. So, I like to compare the launch of the Bitcoin ETFs to the launch of the gold ETFs, because that was kind of the first exposure that traditional finance had to access to hard money. And so the first gold ETF was launched in 2004, and it took 2 years to hit that 10 billion mark. On the flip side of things, the Bitcoin ETF hit 10 billion in 2 months. So much more money being dumped in. Of course, there's a much more access to money now. A lot more people are investing, and we've had 60% of the money supply printed since 2020. So obviously those numbers are a little bit inflated, but still the quickness of this, I think, shouldn't be understated, because when there is more money to be moved around and exchanged hands, the benefit of this is if you're holding the right asset, can be up and up and up and up. And so the interesting aspect of this, though, which I think kind of alludes to maybe the future of the ETF, because I know I've been speaking a lot about it. To me, I think the pure power of Bitcoin is being able to hold it yourself. And I actually have a couple things from sponsors here, and we'll probably get into it a little bit later as to like how you can do that and how that's very easy. So although the ETFs are another avenue, and you could get on your Charles Schwab or Robinhood account and buy that pretty easily, I think holding the true Bitcoin yourself and using self-custody is the true power of all of it. Yeah. And And so that's kind of being highlighted right now in the gold ETFs, because we've actually seen net outflows from the gold ETFs in the past 3 years, but gold price has nearly doubled in the past 5 years. Now you might asking yourself, like, why is that? That doesn't really make any sense. It's because a lot of central banks are buying up gold. We've seen China buying up gold rapidly. We've seen, a bunch of other countries doing it. And I think that's the true power of it. It's like the gold ETF was initial exposure. People realize like potentially it's paper gold. They're certificates. We can't really verify all this. They want to really get the true hard money principles of gold by holding that physical asset. And I think the same thing is going to happen with Bitcoin. I think a lot of people are going to come in to Bitcoin through this ETF and then start to get very curious about it. Like, what am I actually holding here? Maybe they give themselves 1% of this with like 99% S&P 500. Well, that 1% starts turning into 5-10% of their portfolio because it starts appreciating so much more. They get really curious as to what's going on, and then they do more research and kind of get into it that way. So although I think the ETF, like holding it, and I would never encourage anybody to buy it themselves, I think it's going to be a positive in the long run for Bitcoin. And I think the gold ETF, what's going on right now, or the gold price and what is going on with the gold ETF really highlights that right now. And so, yeah, you can see it here in the charts, right? I mean, the gold flows in the ETF, slow crab walk, and the difference is here. I mean, there's so much more money being flowed into the Bitcoin ETFs than the gold ETFs. And gold ETF, or the gold price, still doubled in the past 5 years. And so I think at the end of the day, investors are really going to be looking for hard money, another asset to, with a fixed supply, really get into those Bitcoin principles as to, what they can really put their money in that isn't really fake, right? I mean, you could verify everything on the Bitcoin blockchain, and people have been looking for that in gold, but we've been seeing since the launch of the Bitcoin ETF that there's been massive outflows in the gold ETF and more inflows into the Bitcoin ETF. So
similar thing could potentially happen, right? For the Bitcoin ETFs, if a nation state, for example, wanted to decided that they needed to have Bitcoin, and they regulated the custodians to turn over the Bitcoin to the state and just give the people back cash. That could be a reason for something like that.
yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely, like, if you're not holding your own private keys, it's not your Bitcoin, right? It's all just numbers on the screen at that point. No matter who it's with, right? It could be with Coinbase, it could be with Cash App, it could be with, a Bitcoin ETF. Excuse me. When everything is regulated like that, you open yourself to a lot of counterparty risk. And that's where I think like holding the physical Bitcoin yourself can be, very, very important. And I think, that principle of it can't be understated enough. And I think, that should be a real big harp here. But I know I didn't say any financial advice or anything like that too, but I did make a price prediction that I put into this. I made a bet with a friend of mine. His name's Julian. He goes by Kinetic Finance. He does a lot of great content, short form stuff. But we made a bet by the end of the year. I bet that Bitcoin will hit over 100K, and he bet that it will hit under. And then the loser has to eat like 2 Carolina Reaper peppers on camera. So I'm hoping that it's not me, but there's not only I'm making those predictions. There's a lot of predictions being made by Fidelity and some of these other big money managers. So Standard Chartered even made a prediction when these ETFs launched that there'd be 100 billion inflows by the end of 2024. And that they also predicted 100K Bitcoin by the end of 2024. So we saw the gold price rise a little over four times in the 7-8 year period. And then, that means that they'll, with all this being said, that they'd scoop up anywhere from 437K coins to even over 1,000, so a lot. So yeah, so I know I'm getting up here getting extremely bullish, right? But I told you guys I don't have that. Go ahead.
Do you think the Ethereum ETF approvals will dilute some of the monies going into the Bitcoin?
I don't personally. So the way I view the Ethereum ETF is it's another touch point, but I think that Wall Street's going to view Bitcoin and Ethereum as two different things. So what I think is now they're like, okay, they'll maybe see it as two different assets, but all under like a crypto umbrella. So they want to give their portfolio 2 to 5% access to crypto. So maybe they'll do 3% Bitcoin and 2% Ethereum or something like that. But I think it just gives it more validity. And then I think, people are going to start to look into Bitcoin and Ethereum, the differences between that, and kind of do their own research from there. And then I think, it'll all eventually go to Bitcoin. But I think initially it's another, like I said, like another kind of touch point, and it's another access to the crypto space, so to speak. And so I don't think it's going to be a net negative. I think, all this, anything that can really happen in like the traditional finance space, even if they like try to block Bitcoin ETFs, even if they try to reverse the rulings in the future, I think it all can be positive, because now it's just, people have more exposure to it. So once people have more exposure to it and more touch points, they get more curious and they want to look into it more. And so they want to determine, what this thing actually is. And I can tell, even like just from like my friends, when I started telling them I do these, podcast and I'm coming down to speak to you guys and everything like that. At first they're like, all right, whatever. And now that they're starting to ask some questions, right? So I think it's just, I mean, even with me, my orange pill story, like I took like 5 or 6 different touch points or people bugging me about it before I actually started to look into it myself. So I think that's just kind of human nature is, everybody will get Bitcoin at the price they deserve, right? And I think the Ethereum ETF is just going to be like another touch point where people will get curious about the Bitcoin space.
Yeah, it takes a while to realize the uniqueness of Bitcoin versus, if I talk to a family member about it, it's like, that's all one category.
Yeah.
There's no difference between any of them in their mind. So it is a learning experience, I think.
100%.
That it will take a while, but I can see initially where it would be diluted, where people say, I'm going to spread out my.
Yeah. And I could definitely see that, right? Because like from like a traditional finance world and thought process, like diversification is really important, right? They want to protect your wealth. And, like for example, my mom has a financial advisor, and in 2020, she called me after that year end, extremely happy, like, hey, uh, our financial advisor just gave us a report from the end of the year. Like we were net 0%. Like we didn't lose any money, we didn't gain any money. I'm like, Mom, the S&P 500 was up like over 20%. All he had to do was just not sell and just tell you to calm down for a little bit, And she's like, well, I'd rather just have it sitting there. I was like, well, like, the amount of money that they printed, the inflation that you're going to experience down the line, like all these little things. But, I think it just didn't really grasp with her just yet. And I think that's like kind of where everybody is, right? I mean, in traditional finance, they still kind of have that advantage that they're the trusted, diversification. We're helping protect your wealth. Like, a lot happened, but we didn't have you lose any money. And I think that's where like diversifying in a Bitcoin and an Ethereum ETF actually is kind of an advantage, because it's an easier sell. We'll put a little bit of your portfolio into like a crypto bucket, so to speak. So I think it'll open up some more money, but like I said, I think like eventually in the long run they'll go to Bitcoin. And yeah, like I said, I think everybody will kind of move away from the ETF, but I think that's a little bit years down the line for sure.
To your comment, the difficulty of people understanding what Bitcoin is, I think it's not only about what Bitcoin is itself and the complication of its technology, but it is the inflation issue. So the United States, since it was created, actually never had inflation. Americans don't know anything about inflation. Germany does, and a few economists have read about it. But do we know in the United States what inflation is? Very hard. So what Bitcoin did in 2010 starts showing that this is a real asset that doesn't have inflation. This is what inflation is. So while your dollar is going to be going and increasing like that, but losing purchase power, this one is increasing in purchase power. And now we have a comparison. The dollar was doing that, right? So now they don't understand Bitcoin, but they do understand that, well, that thing has a finite output, supply. That is a new concept that has been, and it's slowly getting into the minds of America.
I think just humans in general just don't really grasp scarcity.
Yes.
You know, I think like, I mean, there's always just that we just always assume there's going to be more, right? We always just assume when we go to the grocery store, there's going to be steak there, there's going to be ground beef, whatever you want, milk, eggs, whatever. And so when there's not, and you anticipate there's things going to be there, what happens usually? There's a huge panic, huge uproar, and things like that. So I think exactly. Yeah, perfect example, right? I mean, when 2020, when all those things, and I mean, you know, we're in Florida, right? Like, I know when I first came down here and there was like the first hurricane warning, I was running to the store to go get water and all this other stuff, and there's none there. And then everybody like later was like, why did you do that? You're gonna be fine, you know. I mean, so, but you know, that's kind of, you know, how things go, right? Is like people just always anticipate there to be massive amounts of supply of everything. You know, one of the sponsors I have is Bitcoin trading cards, and I'll get into a little bit why I like them later. But I don't know if you guys know the Ken Griffey trading card story. I always think this is kind of a funny one, but it's Ken Griffey Jr. For those who don't know, was like a huge baseball player, one of the big rising prospects, and so they printed his rookie card, and Topps made some big thing saying that they were only going to print a limited amount, but they ended up printing like sheets and sheets and sheets, so everybody and their mother was able to get one. So it diluted how much that card was worth, but at first people were thinking this is going to be worth so much money because there's only going to be a fixed supply of that, when in reality they just kept printing more. And so that's kind of how I think everything in the fiat system is that, you know, if you can print money to go make more of it, people are going to do that. And so no matter what it is, unless it's like, you know, a physical metal from the ground, or unless it's like something like Bitcoin where you like actually cannot make more of it, I think people are going to just always find ways to make more of whatever it is, whether it's making it cheaper or what have you, which is what we've seen a lot in the fiat world, right? We've seen, you know, things like these chairs go from like wooden chairs to plastic chairs, and you know, other things like that. Just kind of the, you know, buildings now too, like newer homes are built with worse product or worse material because, you know, everything has just been has had to be made cheaper because less spreads, less money, less purchasing power, all those kind of things. So I think, yeah, like you said, I think that the true power of Bitcoin is that fixed supply, and humans just really can't comprehend that digital scarcity aspect of it too. So, yeah, I could get back into the presentation, or we could keep going back and forth about. Okay. Yeah, so Fidelity, for those who don't know, Fidelity's actually been in the game and putting out Bitcoin research for a long time. I believe since like 2017. So if you want to go look at Fidelity, they have a great link on their website too, which has a great breakdown for you know, new beginners, like kind of looking into Bitcoin. I think it's like Fidelity Digital Assets, and they have it why they're super bullish on Bitcoin alone. And they, you know, said that you need at least a 3% allocation to start in Bitcoin, and they have $147 billion worth of assets under their management. And so, you know, when $500 billion of capital chases that remaining 850K exchanges at exchanges. Luke was the one that projected that would make that price of Bitcoin at nearly 600,000 per Bitcoin. So I'm not going to say it's going to go up that much, but you know, you never know what can happen with all this money coming in, and like we've kind of been pointing out here, that fixed supply. I don't think people can really comprehend that.
That's not a fair project. I know Luke and lots of other people like to do that, but there's also going to be some sell pressure in there.
100%.
You
Yeah.
can't just do the division directly. There's got to be an algorithm.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. There will be some people that sell, right? I mean, especially when we hit the 100K price. Everybody's got a little bit of a number where they have some Bitcoin, you know, and then they'll probably want to trim some off the top and enjoy, you know, the rise that they've been, you know, enjoy the gains maybe a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I don't think like this can be like a correlated number here, right? That where it's not going to be a linear straight up, but there's also the aspect of like the U.S. government having a huge spending problem, and we don't know if they're eventually going to print more money or not. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, coming out of here, we're starting to see the interest rates really high. You know, they start to cut interest rates late, and then we see the consumer really hurting. Then what are they going to do to try to help fix the economy? They'll probably try to inject some more capital in it. So what does that look like? It looks like stimulus checks, business loans, all those kind of things to kind of help out. And so if that were to happen too, you know, you never know what could happen with Bitcoin. So there's a lot of unpredictability in the future, which could in turn kind of benefit Bitcoin. And that's being kind of highlighted here, where the U.S. adds $500 billion worth of unfunded liabilities every 11 days. So a lot of money, liabilities every single day. But I also think, you know, with that ETF, we're just starting out, right? We're like 6 months in, and so we're just getting started here, and we've got a long way to go. And I think a lot of positive things for those here sitting in the room learning about Bitcoin, and how you can hold that going forward. But I appreciate you guys all giving me your time here today. If you want to follow along with me on any social media, I have Instagram, TikTok, and X at Green Candle IT. Somebody took Green Candle on all of those, so if you guys want to help me find the person who has that, and maybe I could steal it from them. And then I'm on YouTube at Green Candle, and then my Macro Insights pod, I'm just starting it. I haven't posted anything on there yet, but both of the podcasts there are to our State of Bitcoin and Macro Insights. So I appreciate the time and the opportunity to come here and speak with you guys. I'd be more than happy to continue it going. And
we got a whole hour left.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
Take your questions, show us your sponsors. Scott, go ahead.
Mount Gox and the distribution of Bitcoin that's coming online.
Yeah.
Next week, month, whatever. Do you have any projections as to how that's going to affect price?
I think initially it'll probably, you know, like cause a little bit of a dip, right? I mean, that there'll be a lot more access to it. But I think more people are going to kind of like want to scoop up those coins because they've kind of been held in custody, so to speak, for quite some time. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of a dip, but when there's a dip, there's always a run up subsequently following that, right? So I think you just kind of look at, I think the biggest driver, you know I went into a lot of ETF talk here and a lot of money coming in. I think out of everything, the biggest driver is the Bitcoin hodlers. A lot of you guys probably sitting here. If you look at the wallets that have held over 1 Bitcoin, that money hasn't moved in over a year. Like 60% of those wallets have had that in the same wallet for over a year. So I think that's going to continue. I know everybody's got like a little bit of a price, like we were talking about earlier, to trim some off the top, but I do think there's some psychopaths out there that are going to take their Bitcoin to the grave and you know and not sell. So I think that's gonna, I think like it, but yeah.
You gotta think too, if they were buying in 2014, they're serious Bitcoiners. I mean, they may not even want to sell, even though they're going to get 100x on their price.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, I've actually met a couple people who got burned by the Mt. Gox debacle. And I talked with a couple of them, and a couple of them were like, yeah, I mean, I got burned by Mt. Gox, and then I just got a bad taste in Bitcoin. So I forgot about Bitcoin for 3 or 4 years, and then I came back into it, which I thought was pretty interesting. So, I mean, you never know. Like, maybe they're now back in the rabbit hole and they're just going to be happy that they have their coin back. And yeah, but I could also see it on the other side of things. Like, maybe somebody got burned and then they're just very, angry about it. And then they're just like, all right, let me just get all my money out of it. So I don't think all the coins are going to sell. I think we'll probably see a few, though, who do.
In the last 3 days, I've heard 2 different analysts go opposite each other. One says, oh, all those Mt. Gox coins are going to stay, they're going to be held. And the other says, no, all those Mt. Gox coins are going to get sold. So it's got to be somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah, and I think that's probably it. That's the problem, though, is like the middle answer is never the attention grabbing one, but it's usually the right one, right? So.
Yeah, and then also we have the sell pressure from the U.S. government has been selling off some of their confiscated Bitcoin, and so has Germany. They've been selling off their confiscated Bitcoin, which is why, for anybody who's wondering why the price is low now, that's the best explanation, is because those 2 governments have been selling off Bitcoin that they confiscated a long time ago.
I had also heard recently that since the halvings, a lot of the miners have become unprofitable. So they're not making as much money. So they're liquidating some of the Bitcoin they've accumulated.
Yeah.
Well, things were good, and now I don't know how much that influences the price.
Yeah, so the way I view Bitcoin miners is a little different than I think a lot of Bitcoiners view it. Is I view Bitcoin miners kind of like, oil drillers or gold miners, right? Like, what do they do with, if you heard an oil driller, oil miner, holding on to oil because of the volatility of the asset, you think that's crazy, right? They sell all their oil immediately as they get it. I think that they should do the same with Bitcoin miners, in my personal opinion, because like the volatility of those things with the swings up and down, when you have depreciating mining equipment, I think it's kind of hard for me to justify that. I mean, of course, you want them to hold some on their like treasury, for the long term, but I think they should try to, in the short term, distance themselves a lot from the volatility of Bitcoin. And I think that's what we saw in the last cycle. A lot of them leveraged, took loans against their mining equipment, took loans against their Bitcoin, and really leveraged all that to try to play into the volatility more. And that a lot of them got burned and aren't around anymore. So I think mining is just going to be a harder game as we go along, where, energy is going to get more expensive. So they're going to always be searching for cheaper and cheaper energy wherever that jurisdiction may be. And then you open yourself up to more geopolitical risk. I just, personally, I think it's just a very hard game. And I think they should, aim for more cash opposed to Bitcoin. And I know that's kind of probably an unpopular opinion here.
Well, it really depends on your situation. And you seem to be referring mostly to the big public miners.
Yeah.
Have all those different concerns, especially with the leverage. And it's like, I think it's Caitlin Long that says this repeatedly, something like, can't remember her exact words, but something like, leveraged Bitcoin will always get burned or something like that, right? So that's those big, huge miners that did what you just described. They failed because they took leverage out on something that they didn't have as good collateral, right? They leveraged something that was going to go down in value over time.
Yeah.
Which was their equipment.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where I think it's the tough part being a miner, is like the energy prices are always going to go up. Once you buy this equipment, it's like a car, right? It's going to keep going down.
That's not always true, though, because right now if you buy mining equipment, the likelihood that you will get an increase in the value of that equipment over the next 3 to 5 years is much higher. Even though, like, I could buy an S21 right now for $6,000,
But when the Bitcoin price gets to 100 grand,
Yeah.
those S21s, I guarantee you, are going to be going for $10, $12, $15,000.
So that's also like a leverage play on it, right? Because like the way I view like buying Bitcoin mining stocks is like also, or MicroStrategy. It's like if you see Bitcoin price go up 5x or something, the Bitcoin mining stocks will go 10x or whatever it is, just simply because of that reason, right? Because their equipment gets more valuable when the Bitcoin price goes up, and so does their stock price and like what they're mining every single day. Then just that dollar value goes up. So the ones that are able to optimize that, um, so that's why I think like the volatility in mining is much higher than the volatility of just being like a Bitcoin hodler or being able to hold Bitcoin on your balance sheet if you're a company who has like a steady inflow of cash coming in. And I think that's the beauty of MicroStrategy, right? I mean, they have like a model where they have a company of just steady, they're a software company, so they have steady inflow coming in all the time, and they can pay all their bills and they have some extra left over. So what are they doing with the extra left over? They're putting it into Bitcoin. They're using traditional finance tools to pull out more debt to buy Bitcoin because they think this is a good time to buy Bitcoin. And they can't afford to do that because they know they can pay off the debt with the steady inflows that they have in their software. So that's why I think, for a company like MicroStrategy, it makes a ton of sense to do what they're doing. And that's what worries me on the flip side of things, because the Bitcoin miners, they're going to have to play with a little bit of volatility, and they open themselves up to a lot more risk of factors that they can't necessarily control, which is energy prices and the volatility of Bitcoin. They'll eventually have to sell a lot, and we don't want it to be a situation where they're and I mean, you want them to be in a situation where they have a ton of cash on hand, in my opinion, for the bear market, because we all know it's probably going to come again. And so if they could play on the leverage side of things and sell when things are high, even if they're selling as things are kind of going down, they could have a lot of cash on hand so they could pay their bills, for the years in the bear market, and then survive that, and then potentially buy better mining equipment and all that kind of stuff too. So that's my personal view on it. I know it is it's maybe not a super popular one when it comes to Bitcoin mining companies, but yeah, I think the volatility of the asset is not the best advantage for mining companies, just simply because it's hard to time the market.
What will the influence of artificial intelligence be on mining? I know there's some partnerships that have been happening recently that I've been reading about that I'm not as familiar with. Like Hugging, Miami just got some serious funding for artificial intelligence. I don't know as much about it.
Yeah, I think that's just like big on like there's just going to be an increased demand of like data servers, centers, and things like that. So there's going to be more demand for all that, because with cloud computing now, like AWS has big giant facilities full of just servers. Google's got that, but as AI comes in, we're going to need more computing power. And so where are we going to get that power? You have to figure out either renewable energy sources like hydro, all those kind of things. And Bitcoin mining is already kind of like a step ahead, already trying to help develop those situations and solutions. What I think is it's more of a selling point to like developing countries and developing nations, where it's like, okay, you're putting in this new pipeline or whatever, why don't you capture that flare gas, and you can build that in now for AI data centers, and then you could also like backdoor put in Bitcoin miners into there as well. So that's where I think what we're going to see is countries and energy facilities start to incorporate with Bitcoin miners, which we've already seen a lot in the US, but also kind of like the AI data servers are going to do kind of like a combination with that, and they'll be working in conjunction. And I think that's kind of the future of everything.
Yeah, it's about the power.
100%.
If you really want to get a little bit deeper into that, I recommend Nick Carter, N-I-C Carter. Look him up. He was just on Palm. Yeah, he was on Palm. Yeah.
Isn't like BlackRock Fidelity buying like 10,000 to like 12,000 Bitcoin a month or so, or every 2 weeks? And like at the pace they're buying it, I mean, there's going to be no supply left on the OTC market and exchanges.
Yeah.
I mean, we're at the pace that they're at right now. I mean, there's like a year's worth of supply supposedly.
Yeah, it's less than that. So I mean, but like I said, that like if they keep buying it at this pace, like I said, I think that the pace is going to slow down like a little bit, and maybe we'll see some selling days and things like that. But we're going to see the release of Mt. Gox coins. There's other avenues where we don't know like who's going to be selling to where. The big publicly traded miners might end up selling to some of these custodians too. So I think the looking at the amount of Bitcoin like left on exchanges as like a fixed supply, and they're not going to be buying more, I don't think is like necessarily the best way to look at it, because like there's always going to be selling pressure from somewhere, whether it's from the miners or confiscated coins or something like that. There's always going to be a seller out there, I think, at least for the short term.
What do you think with the ETFs and all this Wall Street money coming in, and you got all these companies that are buying Bitcoin now, and right now I think after its last halving, it's more scarce than gold. Correct? Am I correct? I mean, don't you think like this might have been like the last time we'll ever see a bear market? You think we'll see a steady climb?
I don't think it'll be a steady climb. So the reason
like 200,000 and drop down to like 70,000.
Yeah, I mean,
so, going up and like maybe a steady climb.
So the reason I still think we'll see those like 4-year cycles, because it's kind of correlated with like a business cycle, and so we're still in the fiat world here, where the business cycle is still kind of lining up with these 4-year curves. So I don't think the halving really isn't going to be a big driver anymore, because if you look at it, 92% of the overall Bitcoin supply is already in circulation, so only like 8% is left to be mined. So in my opinion, it's not the 8% that's really going to be driving the price and everything like that. It's more of like human behavior and human psychology. So the hodlers that I kind of highlighted a little bit earlier, that's going to be a big driver. However many people are going to be buying up Bitcoin, I think that's going to be a big driver. I think that, I think those factors like all kind of, it's hard to predict. But I mean, I think that there's more money and there's more people going to be coming into it. You never know when the government decides to print more money too. Like there's a lot of different things that we can see coming in. I mean, the U.S. government is the only government that could print a bunch of money to buy Bitcoin, right? At the price it is. So you never know. We're having 2 presidential candidates talk about Bitcoin, and Trump and RFK. Biden's team's coming out trying to be more friendly to Bitcoin and crypto. So although it wasn't mentioned in the debate a couple weeks ago, I think it's definitely something that they realize it's like a big talking point. So if it's not this election where it's a big talking point on the ballot, I think in the next 4 years we're definitely going to see that.
One of these days, Congress is going to figure it out and get enough people to vote to just buy $50 billion worth of Bitcoin, or whatever they can, because they'll just write it off and add it to the national debt.
Yeah, just add it, or you try to use it to pay off the national debt. I mean, that would maybe be a smart thing to do, but I don't know. I don't think we'll ever do that. So
What do you think about stablecoins?
So I think stablecoins are good for everybody that is not in the U.S., because I think stablecoins are, I know like in Latin America, for example, where a lot of people cannot get banked, trading Bitcoin for stablecoins to pay in dollars or stable dollars or whatever it is, USDT. I know that that's being used a lot in like places like Costa Rica and other places like that. But I don't necessarily think it's a good thing for like people in the US. Like, I mean, we could swipe our credit card or, have a bank account fairly easily without, getting that confiscated unless you're doing nefarious things. You never know, right? The truckers convoy did happen. So I think that is another avenue to get out, but I think it's more needed in other countries than it is here.
I'm thinking also on the side of distracting the importance of Bitcoin. That's going to be coming a lot, just like the FTX. That was a distraction. A lot of people fell for it without even realizing that they were doing. So the USDC Now it's been approved by MICA, which is for the whole European Union.
Yeah.
It's a stablecoin licensed. This is amazing for me. USDC is way, way smaller than USDT. And then you have the ECNY, which is the Chinese digital currency that is circulating in a digital way. So for people who don't really know too much about what is the technical part behind Bitcoin, USDC, ECNY, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
They're all digital, so it's going to be all confusing there. I'm always wondering, how is that going to affect about the trajectory of Bitcoin? It's always a thing in there in my head.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not quite sure about that one, to be honest. I haven't really.
It's a big demand.
Yeah. No, yeah, I know. I do know that the stablecoin is like a huge demand for people, and I think like that they use it a lot to exchange. To my understanding, I mean, I know that a lot of people use USDT to buy Bitcoin in other countries too.
Let me tell you, for example, in the United States, which you're saying is not as important here, but what's going to be happening, I think, I'm in the real estate and mortgage business. So there is no way to settle in Bitcoin today for a real estate purchase.
Mm-hmm.
It's more likely going to be if you present a USDC, for example, or USDT. You can settle it because it's pegged to the dollar. Everybody understands the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
So they can say, yeah, okay, sure, I'll put it into a USDC or DT, and I'll go to the closing of my real estate, right? Behind that could be Bitcoin, but it's always going to be on the second place because nobody says, okay, no, too much volatility on Bitcoin, no, just put it on USDC. And then so we go to the settle of the transaction, so this title company with this other title company, they get together, they can do the wire transfer, wherever, exactly the same as US dollar, but in USDC, which is digital. That, I think, is going to be increasing in usage.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion.
No, I mean, like I said, I don't have too much of an opinion on that. But what I do know to what you said is that I know that there's been a lot of development in like collateral products, of like basically you can hold Bitcoin in order to, or at least there's a lot of traction and movement towards it where you could have Bitcoin and then use that as collateral to get a mortgage. You'd probably need a lot more Bitcoin than that mortgage would be worth, though, just because obviously the volatility and everything like that. But there's like multi-sig solutions where people are looking into that for sure right now. So although those products aren't available right now, I think that there's been a lot of headwind towards that. There was mortgage products, I think like 5 or 6 years ago, where you could buy Bitcoin, or you could buy a house with Bitcoin. I think like 1 or 2 people used it. So like, is there going to be demand for that? I'm not really sure. I think like the kind of the culture here in the U.S. right now is a lot of just like buy and hold, and not really trying to spend your Bitcoin.
But since ETF, I mean, there's a lot of development based on Bitcoin because there's more acceptance today.
100%.
Because I know a lot of people who I used to talk about Bitcoin and they were just looking at me like, oh, he's deep or what is he? He should belong in the gym. But right now, the same people are coming back and asking questions about Bitcoin because of this ETF acceptance. It's like a real acceptance. And I know in the mortgage business, there's already a lot of development on lending based on Bitcoin and using Bitcoin as collateral.
Mm-hmm.
So whether we worry about what's going to be happening if everybody's buying, there's no more to purchase. Well, there's going to be a lot of byproducts that are coming out from Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any banks or lenders that look at Bitcoin as like even a portion of your collateral for a mortgage today, or do they not even recognize it?
Maybe you can count private ones.
Yeah.
With one hand.
Yeah. So, yeah, the problem with that too is like you have to KYC then that with that wallet. You have to disclose that I bought a house and I told them I had Bitcoin. They're like, well, where is it? And I'm like, yeah. You almost got me. So,
But you have Bitcoin ETF in your Fidelity account, you can.
yeah, then you could point to that. Yeah. So, I mean, that is an advantage of it, right? I mean, you can use that as like collateral. You can buy this in pension funds or, 401ks, even, that kind of stuff. So there is a lot more access to it where you didn't necessarily have access to it before. But there is, like, on the flip side of things, outside of bank accounts, I know that there are IRA accounts and like retirement accounts that you can like have multi-sig solutions with that, where you can basically verify whether or not that Bitcoin has been bought, if that's being moved or anything like that. I know Unchained does that.
Actually has their product. You hold your own keys.
Yeah.
You control the Bitcoin yourself.
Uh-huh. So they do that. I know Choice is another one too. Choice does that, and I think they utilize Casa to help hold your private keys too. Casa might do it too. I'm not sure. I know more about Unchained because I'm from Austin, so I go back there a lot. But yeah.
So besides ETFs demanding more or opening up more Bitcoin interest, I've heard of a couple of retirement funds. I think the Wisconsin retirement fund just opened up a very small portion. Do you see that growing slowly, rapidly? Because that could suck up a lot of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's part of it. But what I think this year and this next cycle, I didn't even really get into it too much in this presentation, but I think it's going to be a lot more institutional adoption. I think we're going to see a lot more like Michael Saylor MicroStrategy lookalikes. We saw 4 companies already start to do that. MetaPlanet, DeFi Technologies, Similar Scientific, and one more, it's escaping me. But they're smaller companies, right? I mean, like MetaPlanet tweeted that they bought like 20 more Bitcoin, and for a company, that's very small amounts. But I think what people are watching is that when these companies all announced that they were putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet, their stock price doubled in like a day. So it's a small, like nobody companies, and everybody just like, is like, all right, I'm going all in on this, MetaPlanet or whatever this is. And I think that's where, we're going to start to see more companies. We've seen Michael Dell kind of hint at it lately. I don't know if you guys, how deep you guys are on the internet. He could be. I've been doing some live streams with my buddy Luke Mikic, and he's kind of tossed that idea out there. He might be the one because he's been selling off a lot of the Dell stock. So you never know. He's a technology guy too, right? He's like, he was in the computer game like before Steve Jobs and all that. So
they're lining up his sales of the stock with the purchases of Bitcoin at 5100.
kind of. I mean, like he's the biggest holder of Dell stock. You've seen Dell stock shoot up, I think, like 120% in the past like 18 months, and he's been selling off a lot of that over that past 18 months. So he's a super rich guy already. So what's he buying with that? That's what everybody's been asking, basically. Yeah, he sold like that amount, and then you've seen somebody been like accumulating a ton of Bitcoin in the past 18 months too. So the timing lines up. And he's been tweeting about it a lot too. I wasn't following him really before, but I have noticed as of late he's been tweeting about it. He was pictured on Micro Saylor's yacht with him too. So
Dave Portnoy will say the same thing.
Yeah.
He wants to buy like 10 million.
Yeah.
He used to say just wait for the price to drop down to the 50s.
Okay, I'm glad you guys know Dave Portnoy. Yeah.
He missed his chance last week.
Yeah. That's how I always like to say I model the green candle is like the barstool of finance. So I didn't know if that would play well here, but I guess you guys do know Dave. So yeah.
He did a pizza review in Bonita Springs.
Oh really?
About 3 months ago, I think.
Yeah, he did a few in Tampa. All like average reviews. I'm lactose intolerant, so I can't really tell you if there's good pizza or not. But
What? Can't eat pizza?
I know it's a tough life I live, man. Somebody's got to do it though.
You could do no cheese pizza.
Yeah, I mean, my parents did that for me growing up. It's like just bread and marinara sauce, and and then they won't put meat on it because the meat doesn't cook well on it or something. So it's just that and vegetables, and it's just like, all right, what am I doing here?
You know, Michael Bell bought a yacht club here in Naples, Did he? Yeah, about 3 years ago.
They're doing big renovations to one market there. Yeah, so we go to the bridge, you can see it, it's all renovated.
Yep.
Tell us about the BTC trading cards.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. I got a bunch up here. So they've got these these are kind of like their new ways to orange pill people. So they've got two kinds of cards. They've got these they call them the Genesis packs. So they hand them out to people. If anybody wants to open some, I'd be happy to give you guys any. I brought some extra. Here we go. Got a volunteer. Yeah. So yeah, you can kind of like open them up and do you want? Yeah, so I have some like already open here, and they got like basically like things and themes about Bitcoin, right? So like this one, for example, is DCA. It's dollar cost averaging. So on the back of the card, it kind of explains what DCA is and everything like that. So it's like another way to kind of physically like orange pill somebody, and like they've got really cool art on there and other things, right? So they have currency here, and it's a currency card on the gold standard. So they talk about when the U.S. went off the gold standard, that kind of thing, and it gives like a big So it's kind of like a cooler way to orange pill people. They've got blockchain. They've got a bunch of these like sitting here. I got some packs open, and then they've also got like some of the ones of like people in the space who have done cool things too. So I opened up some of these, and this is like Lawrence Lepard. He's great. I don't know if you guys have had him down here yet, but I think Lawrence Lepard.
Yeah, he was right here.
Yeah.
He's been here twice now.
Yeah, because I think he has a place down here, right? Yeah. So he's
and our friends Bob Burnett and Mother Satoshi also have cards.
Nice. Yeah. So I got Lawrence's like card here. It's like 348 out of 500, but it's yeah. So I got some cool stuff here. Michael Saylor card. So yeah, just kind of talking about some of the people that have been like influential in the Bitcoin space too. So
Where do you get those cards at?
you can go to btc-tc.com. Use promo code Green Candle, and you can get some 10% off. I think it is. So.
Cool. So if anybody wants to learn about dictatorship and tyranny,
It's in there too.
Are they unchained?
Sorry?
Are they unchained or just?
What do you mean unchained?
On the blockchain?
Oh, I don't think they put them on the blockchain or anything like that. They're just like the physical cards. And then sometimes I don't know. You got cool things. Like I went to England and I hung out with the Bitcoin racing team, so I got them to sign their card. I gave a couple out to auction, but yeah, they got like a Bitcoin racing team in England where they're like second rate level, I think. So it's like the top is like almost like Formula One kind of stuff, and then the second series is like Mini Coopers driving around, and so they qualified for that this year, and so they're doing all that. So yeah, they're really cool. I got some extra packs up here if anybody's interested in some too. So
What other sponsored gear did you bring?
I have my other stuff is Foundation devices. So this is a hardware wallet. I like this hardware wallet the best. It's really super easy to use. That's why I kind of sought them out as a sponsor, to be honest with you. They're really slick. It almost looks like an old Nokia phone too. You can like turn it on from here. It's got a little camera too. So like if you want to hook it up, you can connect it to your phone, and you can buy Bitcoin directly on your phone through their app and send it directly into cold storage. Yeah, go ahead.
This is amazing. Are you an electronic engineer or what kind?
No, so I have a biomedical engineering undergrad and then mechanical grad degree.
Mechanical.
Yeah.
Because these things are, there are many of them, and I really don't know which one is going to be the best and going on forever.
So this is a Foundation passport. So they're about like $200. You can go to foundation.xyz and then Green Candle will give you $10 off. But the other good thing about this too is that they have like a concierge service. So if you want to, if you're intimidated about taking it off an exchange or doing something like that, they'll walk you through that. They're also very big on privacy too. So like, I know like Ledger has had a lot of breaches and like some of these other ones. So like they're very big on the Foundation. So you can go to foundation.xyz and then use promo code Green Candle and you'll get $10 off. And then the last thing I brought a stamp seed.
These are Bitcoin only.
Yep, Bitcoin only too. I think that's big. Yeah. And then if you guys get foundation advice, you should definitely store the seed phrase on a punch plate. So a big reason for that is because like if you have a Google password manager, somebody hacks your Gmail account or something like that, you're gonna get all your passwords stolen, and subsequently your Bitcoin could be stolen if you have your seed phrase on there. So I always recommend people get like a punch plate, and they have 24 or 12 word seed 12 word punch plates. Foundation recommends 12 words. I think it's easier, and 12 words is pretty secure. They actually did like a big thread as to why like you only really need 12 words. But yeah, I think those are all handy dandy. Huh? Yeah, fire. I mean, I've been doing a series of videos of me trying to smash it. So
Was Lucy in on that and Wes?
So Lucy's been helping me. So I did. I had an NFL kicker. I taped it to the football. Had him punt it. He didn't do anything. Yeah. They played a hockey game at the Canadian Conference. I tied it up at the end of the game and just had him hit slap shots on it. Didn't do anything. I had a TV in one of my Airbnbs that broke, so I taped it to a TV and just got a baseball bat and smashed it. Didn't do anything. I deadlifted like 3 or 4 plates and dropped it on there. Didn't do anything. Pretty secure, and you can still read it all. So.
Have you tried burning it though?
No, that's up next. I'm gonna try doing some more like science experimenty kind of stuff here soon. But
How about forgetting where you put it?
yeah, I mean, of course that's a. Of course that could be a problem, right? Yeah.
It has the screw holes on the corners, right?
Yeah.
So the intention of the manufacturer was that you would find a place to screw it in, like into a safe or
Like the bottom of your hull.
Yeah.
the bottom of your hull of your boat or the under your
Boating
bed,
accident,
right?
yeah.
Under your bed, something like that.
Yeah.
Dining table, but then if you do it on furniture, you got to make sure you remember.
Yeah.
You have to give away the furniture.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, no way.
My God.
Do a microwave next.
Yeah. Oh no, that would break the microwave.
I know, but it'd be great video.
Yeah, if I have a microwave that I'm throwing away, that'd be, yeah, that's a good idea. But yeah, the science experiment stuff I think is up next. But yeah, they got a cool hammer too that you can like. They comes with all that stuff too. So this is for they give you like the lettering, so you can see on here. Yeah. And like I don't know, they made this cooler hammer so it's a little easier to punch these in. So, but yeah, this is stamp seed also.
Did you make it yourself then?
What do you mean? The letters and stuff on there? Yeah, I went and just.
Yeah, they send you a blank plate, right? When you order one of those, you get a blank plate. And you get the
I didn't bring the letter things with me, but they have like you can buy just the plates if you have like the letter things already, or you could buy like the full set. But yeah, if you guys want to like this one. No, it's not my seed phrase. It's just a demo one. It says like huh? What do you mean? Tried to do what? Yeah. I mean, you gotta hammer it pretty good. It's titanium, so. Oh no, I didn't make up a seed phrase. It's like just like a challenge, like bet you can't break this or something like that on there. So
Speaking of wallets, what do you think about Sparrow?
I think Sparrow's really good. I think
I
Sparrow's
love it.
yeah.
It has two passwords. I mean, one is your password. You just go in like a
Yeah.
regular password. But then you have to put another phrase, and then you have your 12. So it's got 3
Yeah.
layers. I don't think anybody can break that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Sparrow is really secure. It's just the only failure touch point is, all these things we just listed about potentially losing those seed phrases. So you just got to be good and secure with that.
Right,
yeah.
Right. You lose that one too.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's exactly. But no, I mean, I think Sparrow's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a book of phrases and all kinds of passwords.
Yeah.
That book is in my safe.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
But isn't it still like even with Sparrow, it's not self-custody?
Oh, it is.
I would say it is.
You'd say it is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's like a Sparrow like cold wallet and there's a Sparrow hot wallet too. So you can like differentiate.
The cold wallet?
There's two. I'm pretty sure there's 2 different ones with Sparrow, right?
How does the cold one work? I mean, I might be in the cold one, but
You would have a
still.
You need
Yeah.
a device. You have a device.
You would have a separate device.
No. Then mine is mine.
Yeah, then yours might be a hot wallet then.
Mine's hot, but this is like.
Yeah, so hot wallet isn't. Yeah. So a hot wallet, the thing that you run into is it's like somebody hacking your computer or something. But like with Foundation and this kind of stuff, it's nearly impossible.
They don't know this three phrases. They don't know.
But if Sparrow went out of business, would you be able to access?
Well, that I don't know.
Yeah, it's software.
Yeah.
So I mean, you would. I mean, like if Apple went out of business, would your like computers quit working?
Right. How about if Ledger support goes out of business? Ledger.
Well, I can. Yeah, but with my Ledger, I can access it with another hardware.
Yeah, it's the same with the Sparrow.
It's the same with the
Yeah, it's the same with Sparrow.
That seed phrase, that 12-word seed phrase gets you into anything. You can use it anywhere.
on a hot wallet too.
Yeah.
I think it's very secure. I really like it. Really like it.
What's up?
Hey, you went to Canada, right? For the
Yes, I did.
big show there. How did you find
Yeah.
it?
How did I find Canada, or like what?
Was it a nice occasion for you? Was it a great conference to be at?
Yeah, no, 100%. So this is the second time I've gone to the Canadian Bitcoin conference. Last year was in Toronto. This year was in Montreal.
Yeah.
This year the venue I thought was great. Last year the venue was like in a hotel, so it wasn't as good. This one was kind of in like an old theater, so I think it was like a really cool historic venue. The stage was really nice. I think like a big part of why I like to go to a lot of the conferences is more like the networking opposed to the talks. I think like a lot of people, the talks are recorded in a lot of places, but you meet a lot of cool people doing a lot of cool things. I met you guys at conferences too, so you just never know who you're gonna run into, even people like right down the street from you. So yeah, I think like conferences are really valuable for just like the networking aspect of it, and I think there's a lot of cool things going on in Canada for sure.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a good buzz that went around that event.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you catch wind of the Prague event as well, then?
Yeah, I really wish I went to Prague, to be honest, but I just couldn't swing it because I went to Madeira earlier this year, so I couldn't go to like 2 Europe trips in 1 year. Hopefully next year, maybe I can like speak at that one. But speaking of that, like I met the organizer of the Prague event in Madeira for Bitcoin Atlantis. So yeah, he's great. So
Yeah, interesting guy.
so hopefully next year I can speak there.
Mateus?
Yeah.
Something?
See that word fill out guy?
No.
No, that's Mateo.
Yeah.
Okay, so then Nashville next?
Yep. I'll be in Nashville, so I'll be there for like a little over a week. I'm going in the 21st. So I'm going to try to do like a lot of content and stuff there. I actually turned 30 while I'll be there, so dirty 30 in Nashville. So
You're all down.
yeah, my back hurts a little bit. I got to stretch out the hamstrings tonight before I go to sleep, you know.
So are you able to get on stage at Nashville? Or are you
Yeah, so I should be speaking at Nashville. I don't know the full extent. They have me listed as a speaker, and they told me that, but I'm either moderating a panel or doing a talk similar to this. Not quite sure. So they haven't told me the full extent. Yeah, hopefully. I ran track in college at University of Memphis, cross country and track. So I did like the mile, the steeplechase, the 3K, and the 5K.
Just looking at some of your times, you were fast.
Thank
Probably
you.
still are fast.
I'm a little washed up now. I can still run a little bit, but not quite as fast as I used to.
Washed up, you put on a lot of weight.
I did. Can you believe it? I'm 20 pounds heavier than I used to be. I was a twig. When the wind blew too hard, I was gone.
You know what I find in these meetups and trade shows, everything about crypto and all that, just the friendship is just unbelievable. Everybody's so humble. Everybody has a different type of mentality. There's a camaraderie, if I can use that word. It's just like an invisible attraction, that keeps the group together. It's quite refreshing.
Yeah, it's really unique.
Remember, I come from the real estate people that,
Yeah.
my God, whenever we have, and this is, the real estate's probably the biggest association in the United States.
Yeah. To that point, like I'm going to Nashville. I'm staying with a guy who I met in England, and then a guy I know who's Canadian, and we're all coming into Nashville, staying together. So, yeah. So, yeah.
You staying downtown near the convention center?
I think we have like a townhouse. Like we wanted to get a townhouse and a rooftop. We're trying to do like a little bit more content stuff behind it. So we filmed like a little vlog of like the last day in Montreal. We kind of want to do that. So we kind of want to like do some like shorts of us like going around interacting with people. We want to do like going around Nashville trying to onboard merchants onto Bitcoin, like kind of do like more pointed things like a few days before the conference, and then like the conference kind of like behind the scenes. So like I have the vlog where we have like it's like an hour now. We're trying to cut it down to like 20 or 30 minutes of like kind of the experience behind the scenes, because I think that's one thing a lot of the conferences are lacking, is that a lot of people see all the talks, they're all recorded. Everybody kind of sees the same talks, same people kind of go on podcasts, rehearse the same things, you guys could have seen like this talk if you watched the Canadian stream kind of thing too. But I think the unique part about conferences, which doesn't get highlighted too much, is like what goes on. Like, you can go meet Ben Sessions, he's real open. Like you can go meet, Lawrence Lepard's been here, so maybe not a good example, but people go up and meet him, and you see him on all these podcasts and everything, and you get to like just sit down and have lunch with them and interact with them. Like I got to do that with Preston Pish and Madeira, and that's how I got him on my podcast. But like just kind of sitting and picking his brain, and then talking about his kids, and his kid is doing really well in swimming in high school and everything, and just seeing him light up about actual life stuff outside of that stuff, I think is really cool too. So yeah.
So now you've been speaking more at some of the larger conferences, which is a great
Yeah,
accomplishment.
thank you, appreciate that.
You must be enjoying it a little bit, right?
No, yeah, I love it. Yeah, for sure.
Do you look at it like that's kind of what the horizon feels like for maybe another season or so, where you're doing the big show, the circuit? You're going to be in Santa Monica later this year. So like Pacific Bitcoin, I don't know about Pacific. I haven't talked to them yet. Hopefully somebody from Adopting Bitcoin in El Salvador, it's in November, just reached out. So hopefully that ends up working out. To be honest, I've got 3 great sponsors here right now. And I'm very close to being able to take this and go full time. So that's been my goal, is to
I've been at it for like 3 years now in the content stuff. So my goal was to kind of go for it full time by the end of this year. And I think like it's going to be to the point where I'll have to make a decision here in the next few months. So fingers crossed. Yeah.
Can you tell us what it is that you're doing that you might leave behind to go full time?
Yeah, for sure. So I work for the devil. I work for JP Morgan. So I know the inner workings of the banking system as to like why I think like that potentially could fail, but should maybe not put that part out. I still need that job for maybe a couple more months. So, but yeah, I work in like the commercial banking fraud sector. So I see a lot of, for like the biggest bank in the world, you'd be very surprised about how little technology we use. So.
And they're happy to hear about your green candle.
They're not. They're not very thrilled about it. So I actually did get a comment about it because they posted about it on LinkedIn and tagged me, and my boss was like connected with me. So they brought me into the office and they sat me down. They're like, "What's this? Did you get permission? All this and that." So I removed them from my LinkedIn from then on, and so I haven't gotten any more comments since then. And then I just say like I'm gonna go on vacation, and then they just ask me. I was like, "Oh, it's great. I went to Portugal just to go. I went to Montreal just to go visit friends." Like, why Montreal? I was like, I have friends up there. Yeah, exactly.
Do you really look at it as a conflict of your mission or your job duties or something?
I mean, I think it's like at a certain point, it's always like, all right, how good of a job are you doing at this job? So if like, it's between me and somebody else and they know I'm doing stuff on the side, they're like, all right, it's always just like another, like, I don't think they usually necessarily look at it as a positive. They always like, I mean, the working at JP Morgan has really opened my eyes to like how like fiat minded still a lot of people are. Like they want you to basically your personality to be your job. They want you to go home, think about it, all that kind of stuff. And so they realize I don't do that already. So they, aren't super thrilled with all that. Like they want us to go to all these dinners and do like social interaction stuff with that. And like every time they want to do dinners, it's on Thursdays, and that's when the Bitcoin Bay meetup is. So I'm like, I can't make it, So I mean,
Do any of your coworkers own Bitcoin? Can you name one other one?
so one of them, I guess he was like either in the spot I was or like kind of helping in the same area. He got hired like right before I started, and one of I guess a former guys that worked in like my position or near, he got hired by some crypto company in Seattle, and he got moved from Tampa all the way over there for that. So I think he was into it, but I think like, I don't know, it's weird. They try to talk about like innovation and things like that, and it's just we use Excel like every single day and manually input stuff. Like we had a big meeting because some people were manually inputting numbers wrong for the past like 3 months. Like you just got caught. It's like, no, not on purpose. Not on purpose.
We have to wrap up soon. So
give Brandon a nice big hand around.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Brandon, for coming to Bitcoin meetup. We really appreciate it. Great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope to see you again.
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Yep. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.